Okay, good evening, everyone. My name again is Sarcoidosis. I'm a board member here at Life and Breath Foundation. I'm excited to have you all here tonight for another educational series webinar. Tonight's topic is how to form self-care habits that stick. Before I introduce our speaker, I have a few words about Life and Breath Foundation. Our primary goals are to offer the sarcoidosis community effective tools to track their journey, decipher medical issues, and maximize their quality of life, provide a nurturing environment for those affected by sarcoidosis to share their experiences, to build more awareness within the medical community to help combat this chronic disease. Also, please remember that April is Sarcoidosis Awareness Month, and the Life and Breath Foundation will be showing support for patients by hosting our virtual run and walk on April 16th through the 24th. For more information, please go to our website, lifeandbreath.org. Our speaker tonight is Jason Gootman. Jason is the founder of Rise and Thrive Wellness Coaching. He is also a Mayo Clinic certified wellness coach, a National Board certified health and wellness coach. He is a certified nutritionist and certified exercise physiologist. He's an expert in behavior change and habit formation. Jason helps people turn knowledge and good intentions into action, habits, and results. Please take note of Jason's contact information below. Jason, thank you very much for being here tonight. Welcome. The stage is yours, so take it away.
Thanks, Saul. And what I want to do to sort of set the frame for this conversation is, I know we can't all see each other in this format, but you can raise your hand if you've ever had this experience. There's something that you know you want to do that would help better your well-being in some way. It might be eating better, it might be exercising more, it could be getting more sleep, it could be reducing your stress levels, anything like that. And you know what to do, but you still have a hard time turning that knowledge and that good intention into an action or into a habit. Has anyone had that challenge? And I certainly have. That's almost a rhetorical question. It's part of the human experience. There's a difference between knowledge and action and habit. And that's what we're gonna talk about today. I know you've had some presenters in the past that have given a lot of great advice in different areas of self-care and wellness. So I'm not going to go into recommendations around nutrition or exercise or holistic wellness, but we're going to focus today on how to take any knowledge you already have and turning that into some actions and habits. Now, this slide is sarcastic. This is our pop culture's answer to this question. So you know what to do, you know it's important, just do it. Now, if just doing it worked, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? And all of our friends and all of our relatives wouldn't have struggles with improving their eating habits or improving their exercise habits, because there's a lot more to forming new habits than what's implied in the just do it statement, which is willpower. Now, willpower is helpful. It is part of human nature that when we're determined to do something, we can will ourselves to do it. But willpower is an exhaustible resource. We only have so much of it, and we can run out of it, especially if there are other demands in our life that are taking our energy. So a better way of thinking about successful habit change is something like this statement, which is clearly less sexy. It wouldn't be a Madison Avenue statement for a sneaker brand like Just Do It. But this is the heart of the matter, and we're going to break this down a little bit in the next 15 or 20 minutes. But really what you want to do to form a new habit is something like take small, convenient steps that are in alignment with your values, interests, and strengths while getting plenty of the kinds of support that help you most. And what we're really doing when we lean into, embedded in that one sentence, are the 7 evidence-based keys to successful habit change, which we're gonna break down one by one in a moment. And what we're really doing when we lean into those 7 keys is we're expanding our toolbox so that we're using both willpower and what I call skill power. And skill power allows us to leverage a much wider swath and a much deeper, long-lasting, that goes way back in our evolution aspects of human nature. So we're going to make this practical today. If you have something handy like a pad of paper and a pen, an old-fashioned way of doing it like that works awesome. Or if you have a notepad open on your computer or your phone, that can work well. What I'd suggest doing to get the most out of this would be on each of these 7 reflection questions to actually jot down some of your thoughts. That will get it out of your mind and help you process them a little bit. So the first question I have for you is, what habit do you want to form? And what I encourage you to do is write down something very clear, very specific, and in the positive. So an example would be, I walk for 30 minutes, 4 days a week. Now, it doesn't have to be something you can do right away. This is the habit that you're aspiring to. Again, I recommend stating it in the positive. For example, sometimes it's someone's tendency to say, I'll stop eating sugar. A better way of saying that would be something like, when I'm hungry for snacks, I reach for whole, real, natural food most of the time. Our mind really likes to latch on to the object of our sentences. So when you have a statement like, I'm gonna avoid sugar, you really just end up thinking about sugar all the time, and it makes it hard to stay away from it. So I'll give you 30 seconds or so to write out a clear, specific, positive habit that you want to form. And now what each of us is starting to have is something more tangible, right? Because oftentimes when we start a process like wanting to improve our self-care, we say something to ourselves like, I want to eat better, or I want to exercise more. That's really not specific enough to compel us into action. Now we've got something tangible to play with. So now we can make it even more powerful by asking ourselves this question: what will this habit bring to my life? So think about the conditions of your life as they are now. And if you were to succeed in forming this habit that you want to form, what would it bring to your life that currently isn't part of your life? I highly encourage you to think about this from within you, meaning you might have ideas come into your mind from what your physician is saying to you, or what a relative is saying to you, or what you think your answer should be, maybe based on cultural norms. You'll get the most power out of answering this question if you answer it truly from within you, what that habit will bring to your life personally. So in that spirit, I'll give you a couple of examples here of common things I hear from clients and others. Might be more energy, might be better mental clarity, might be the ability to do something that I haven't been able to do in a little while, like go hiking or go dancing, or something in that direction. But don't let me lead the witness. Consider those examples and jot down for yourself, if you succeeded in forming this habit in a consistent way, what would it bring to your life? And I should add, we're going to take questions at the end. So if any questions come up, if you're putting them in the chat, Saul will get them to me, and we'll take them at the end. And Saul also mentioned my contact info was available at the beginning. If you have questions around any of this that are more personal in nature that you don't necessarily want to ask in front of the group, I welcome calls, texts, or emails with any questions after today. And I say that also because we're going through this process fairly quickly to give you an overview. So if you have a question, don't worry that it won't get answered. Plenty of chance to answer those questions. All right, so the third important step in forming a habit, we've got a clear habit. We have a personally important reason for doing it. You might hear people talk about that as your why. That's also back from my original statement after the just do it statement. What we're doing when we talk about what this will bring to our life is we're tying it to our values. And our values are a very important motivator. We really live our lives aligned with our values. So the more we get in touch with and dwell on our values, the more likely we are to take action in a certain direction. So now this is my tie of favorite of the 7 steps, and I'll tell you when we get to the other tie, because this one in practice is the one that helps people the most. So using that example I had earlier of the habit I want to form is to walk for 30 minutes 4 times a week. You want to ask yourself, what's a baby step I can take? So using my example, my baby step might, if say I wasn't walking at all, my baby step might be, I'm going to walk for 10 minutes twice a week for the next 2 or 3 weeks and see how that goes. This is very important. It's very common in our culture to say things like go big or go home. So we think that the way to succeed is to set as big, scary, as audacious of a goal as possible. And then that's going to create so much motivation and that's going to compel us to act. But what typically happens when we try to do too much too soon is we have less of a chance of succeeding at what we set out to do. And we end up saying to ourselves, oh, I failed again, or I knew I couldn't do it. That kind of self-talk, and that kind of self-talk is demoralizing, which is really the opposite of motivating. Now, I can explain that better in this. This is a picture worth 1,000 words. So you can see the person on the right is trying to take a very big step, and they're essentially left floundering. They can't even reach the first step. And that's what leads to that feeling of like, I knew I couldn't do this. I knew this was too hard. I knew this wasn't the right time to go for this. Whereas the person on the left took very small steps and they're cruising right along. They're feeling good about the process, because what happens when we take small steps is we tend to have success. And when we have success, we say to ourselves things like, look at me, I'm really doing this thing. Or, wow, this is fun. I didn't think it could be this easy. That's essentially internally contagious. We want more of that. So back to my example, if I ultimately want to walk 30 minutes 4 times a week, and my initial action steps are to walk for 10 minutes twice a week, there's a good chance I'll succeed when I do that, because it's not too far from my current normal. And what'll happen is I'll be very excited and I'll say, well, next week I'm going to turn those into 15-minute walks and I'll succeed with that. And next week I'll turn those into 20-minute walks. And the next week I'll add a 3rd walk. And it doesn't take very long. 8, 10, 12 weeks down the road, I might be at my ultimate goal of a habit that I wanted to form. But I got there by taking baby steps. So I'd love for you to keep this picture in your mind when you're working on forming a habit. There's almost no step that's too small if it's in the direction of the habit you want to form, and you can always expand your steps over time. 4th of the 7 steps is to ask yourself, how can I make this more enjoyable? Now that might seem obvious, but again, it's common in our culture to say things to ourselves like, no pain, no gain. And the idea behind sayings like that are that in order to get a benefit, I have to suffer in some way. And it's not to say that to get a benefit of something, we aren't often taking on a challenge and doing something out of our current comfort zone. But I highly encourage you to couple any challenge you're taking on with as much enjoyment as you possibly can. That helps to make a habit sticky. Good example would be if someone, let's use my walking example, but let's say someone's going to do it at a gym on a treadmill because of weather or other considerations. They might listen to their favorite music while they walk, or they might watch their favorite television shows, or they might coordinate with a friend to walk on the treadmill next to them, or some combination of those things, all things that will make it more enjoyable. So we do things because they're beneficial. You know, earlier we talked about things being important to us or what they'll bring to our lives, but we also do things because they're enjoyable. And if we can couple the things we're doing that are beneficial with things that are genuinely enjoyable to us, we're far more likely to start taking action, keep taking action, and ultimately form habits. I'm skipping a few slides in the essence of time. There was just some further explanation on that idea. The fifth step is to ask yourself, how can I make this habit I want to form more doable? And what we're really talking about here is using your existing strengths. Some people are, I'll use an example around that walking, like some people are very data driven. They might have a scientific job, and data is just something that they're really proficient at. That kind of person might want to keep an Excel spreadsheet of their physical activity. That helps utilize their strengths in a way that and ties their strengths to the habit they're trying to form in some way. Another example would be someone who's working to eat better, and maybe they used to work in a restaurant. Maybe they used to be a chef. So they'll commit to doing something like prepping some food for the week on Sunday mornings. Whereas someone who isn't much of a chef and doesn't enjoy cooking, but also wants to eat well, the plan to do some meal prepping on Sunday might not be the best plan for them. Better plan for them might be researching affordable options for prepared foods at their local food stores or something like that. So the idea here is to tie the habit to things you're already good at in other areas of your life, as opposed to trying to think, I got to do this habit the way my brother's doing it, or my sister's doing it, or the way someone on television is doing it, or someone on YouTube is doing it, but to utilize your existing strengths and try to tie them to the habit you want to form. Number 6 is, how can you make this this action and ultimately habit you're trying to form more convenient? This has to do with that idea that willpower is an inexhaustible resource. So let's continue with that walking example, but let's say the person's desire is to do it at a gym. And maybe there's two options. Maybe there's a gym that's across town and there's a gym that's 5 minutes away. All other factors being equal, the person is far more likely to sustain this habit if it's convenient, if there's less friction. Because put yourself in the shoes of finishing a work day or otherwise having a challenging day, and it's time when you can go do some walking, but you're facing a 30-minute drive in rush hour versus facing maybe a 5-minute drive that's out of the way of typical traffic patterns. That kind of thing can be worth it, even if other factors might compel you to go to the gym across town. Other examples would be creating things that are, if we're talking about exercise, opportunities to exercise right in one's home. There's a lot of other examples, but this, another way to think about this is, oftentimes a person will say to me, I end up making the poor food choice because it was more convenient, because it's what was in the house. What you really want to try to do is set your environment and your life up so that the habits you want to form are right in front of you, are nearby, are as convenient as possible. And then we'll tie this together with the 7th key, which is a tie for my favorite of the 7, because this one also in my practice is the one that helps people the most. And that would be to ask yourself, how can I get support with this? And this is another sort of countercultural idea, right? There's definitely an idea in the United States and the West of I should be able to do everything myself. And if we really look closely at human nature, we don't do that much of substance truly by ourselves. It might look that way outwardly sometimes, but usually someone accomplishing something significant has, if it's not overt, they have significant support in the background. So I would highly encourage you to judiciously get support from various people in your life. This is a catchy way to help that idea stick. The saying that wellness starts with we. Just highly encourage you to allow yourself to, if you have a tendency to think you need to sort of be stubbornly independent and do this by yourself, to sort of embrace your humanity and know that it doesn't make you weak to ask for and accept support. It makes you human. And this saying is kind of I hope it's a catchy way to have that stick in your mind. And then on a more practical level, this slide doesn't exactly show it as in 4 quadrants, but I think you'll get the idea here that I encourage people to think of support as really being possible in 4 different buckets. Personal support that's general, that might be talking with a friend or relative and telling them about your commitment, and asking them to check in with you periodically and ask how you're doing with the habit you're trying to form. Personal specific support might be, I touched on it earlier in one of the examples, maybe asking a friend to exercise with you, or maybe asking a friend to do meal prep with you, or even if it's something you're not physically doing together, maybe you and a friend could both commit to getting 8 hours of sleep and check in on each other. That's personal specific support. Professional support is also helpful too. And professional general support would be like talking with your physician and saying, hey, I'm going to work on forming A habit or B habit. And do you have any advice for me on that? Do you have any tips? And maybe we could check in on my next appointment. Professional specific support could be, let's say you want to get into swimming because it's gentle on your body, and it's exercise that would feel good for you. You might take some adult swimming lessons. So those are examples of ways you can judiciously look to different areas of your life and get as much support as you can. So I'm going to leave it there. That's a very concise but thorough run through of 7 things you can do that I hope you're feeling like give you more to work with than just willpower. What I would suggest is you can use this slide, and you can take a screenshot if you like, essentially as sort of the troubleshooting guide, troubleshooting guide that comes with an electronic device or came with your car. If you're struggling to form the habit you want to form, instead of saying to yourself, what's wrong with me, or why can't I summon more willpower, use these 7 steps, starting with clear desire, as sort of a checklist, and ask yourself, oh, did my desire get foggy and sort of mushy? Maybe I could make that more clear. Or down to the 3rd one, the baby steps. Maybe I'm taking too big of steps and I'm not experiencing enough success. So you get the idea. This slide works as a good summary of everything we just went through. just to make it available again, feel free to take a screenshot of this slide to have my phone number and email address if you have questions after today. And I'm going to open it up now to live questions.
Okay, I have a question. Are there any tools or apps you recommend using to form good habits?
This is a sort of a leading edge. A lot of tech types are trying. It's a challenge because a lot of what helps us form habits are actual human interaction, and and the apps obviously leave that out. So I don't have a specific one to recommend. This is a sort of answer to your question. If you'd like additional thoughts around some of this stuff, there's a couple of best-selling books that have come out in the last couple of years that get into habit formation. One is called Tiny Habits, and one is called The Power of Habit, and another one is called Atomic Habits. Those are three very good resources.
Great, thank you. There's a few questions. I'm going to try to consolidate them into one question, but obviously we're dealing with a lot of sarcoidosis patients. And I think one person put it well: I have the best intentions, but there are some days where I don't feel good. I can't keep up with my habits. What advice do you have for those folks who have sarcoidosis and might not be able to commit to doing their habits daily?
Yeah, two thoughts. One is daily isn't necessary. There are certain things that we need to think about doing daily, like like getting sleep. But certain things can add quite a bit to our life if we're doing them twice a week or 3 times a week or 4 times a week. So that would be my general frame to answer the question. And then I would encourage you to dwell on the popular saying that goes something like, don't let perfection be the enemy of, I think the way it's often said is, don't let perfection be the enemy of excellence or good. I might say it as, don't let perfection be the enemy of helpful. So if there's a habit you're trying to form that is genuinely helpful to you, and it's simply easier to do on some days and harder to do on some days, embrace that anti-perfectionist attitude and realize that doing it when you can do it is helpful, and there's no need to aspire to something like perfectionism.
Great, thank you. Next question. Because I'm not working, it's hard to get nutritious foods, especially because they're so expensive, especially today. Is there any advice you can provide?
Sure. Yeah, it's more of a nutrition question than a habits question, but I think my general recommendations would be in the direction of whole grains, especially whole grains like oats, rice, and quinoa, and legumes, which are like beans and lentils. Beans being like garbanzo beans, kidney beans, white beans. Lentils coming in different varieties. That's a way to get a good amount of bang for your buck in terms of nutrient density and micronutrient density. I want to give that one a little bit more thought, and if the person who asked that question wants to email me so that I have your contact information, I think we can get a little creative together and go a little deeper on that. But those are my first thoughts.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question. What is your advice for sticking with habits when my schedule changes constantly?
Yeah, I think I would use some of the similar ideas of not needing to be perfect. And let me give an example. So let's say, I'll use the example I've used consistently of, let's say I'm want to walk 30 minutes 4 times a week, and a day happens that there's no way that day I'm going to be able to walk for 30 minutes. What I would encourage you to do is not scrap it all together, but if there's 15 minutes, do 15 minutes. And if there's 10 minutes, do 10 minutes. That helps us stay in the game. It helps us get the some of the physiological benefit, but also it helps us to continue to stay in contact with that activity, which helps with the habit formation and the habit maintenance. I think the key there is to be flexible, use an I'm going to do my best attitude, knowing that my best on some days will be better than others. But if every day I do my best, it's going to average out to some consistency and some success that's hopefully better than I'm currently doing.
Okay, thank you. Next question. How do I avoid tasty food that's bad for me?
The best antidote to that is not to try to repel the food that's less nutritious, but to create some nutritious snacks and meals that are equally as tasty. Sort of give that less nutritious food a run for its money. Give it some competition. No pun intended. Give it some healthy competition. And that's just going to make you less compelled to go for that less nutritious snack, because it doesn't have something that you can't get elsewhere. I'd encourage you to peruse recipes and look up, use overt search terms like take a food you enjoy that might be in the current form less nutritious, and I'll think of an example. I'll give you an example. I was working with a client the other day, a new client, and they were a couple, and they were talking about they really don't like drinking plain water, so they drink a lot of iced tea, and they buy iced tea that has quite a bit of processed sugar in it. So together we looked up some recipes for lower sugar or no sugar iced tea that can be made at home and has all kinds of other interesting stuff in it to make it flavorful, like watermelon and mint and different spices and all kinds of things. And I don't have an answer for you how it's going for this couple, but they're experimenting with some of these alternatives. My point is that people have done the work for you already. There's enough recipes online to keep you busy for the rest of your life. And if you specifically look up healthy recipes in a certain domain, you can find recipes where the recipe creator has done the work of experimenting with different seasoning and things like that to make healthy foods that are really tasty. And I would just encourage you to experiment in that direction.
Great, thank you. Here's the next question. We will have a new normal eventually, but what can we do in this pandemic where some of us suffer with chronic sarcoidosis?
Yeah, I think I'll repeat the refrain from a couple of the earlier questions, and maybe add this element to it of do the best we can under the personal or collective circumstances we're under, and to the best we can. I think it generally helps to focus on what we can do, what is helpful, what is uplifting, what is enjoyable, and not to be denying what is unpleasant and what is challenging. But in most situations, we can find something positive, something uplifting to attach ourselves to, and that would be my general encouragement would be just to do the best you can, in the spirit of caring for yourself the best way you can, probably similar to how you might treat a friend or a relative, is to have acceptance of the situation and have compassion for yourself, and then to act kindly toward yourself and do the best you can under the circumstances you're experiencing at the time. That would be my general approach, and I will also say that that's been and continues to be my personal approach under challenging circumstances.
Thank you. Next question. Any tips for meal planning? I want to eat healthy, but hate cooking.
One answer I alluded to earlier is see what's available where you shop for food. If it fits in your budget, there's no shame in outsourcing something that you feel less skilled at or enjoy less. We all have so many demands on our day, on our time, that we don't need to put the unnecessary burden on us that we need to meet all these other demands, and we have to be a top chef. So consider looking around for what's already been prepared. Second idea is to do some preparation in batches, because then you're not doing it often. And a good example of that would be cooking soups or stews or chilies in a slow cooker. That can be done in less than an hour, and that can make depending on appetites, that can make 5 to 10 meals for one person, or obviously half that for two people. Third thought I have on that is this I'm borrowing from a client, and this plays off of a couple or more of the steps to forming a habit. A client of mine has friends over to cook, and what she's doing is cooking some stuff for the week, so not just cooking for that meal. So she might be making a lasagna for the week, or a soup, or roast a whole bunch of vegetables in advance, or grill some meat in advance. And what she does is she has 3 or 4 people come over, and they play music, and what they do is they each make something to go home with, and they mostly go home with what they made, but they also share. So that way you get other people's ideas, and it just doesn't feel like as much work to each of them because they're doing it together. So those are 3 ideas I have. If you still have questions on that, feel free to send me an email and we can go a little deeper on that.
Thank you. Next question. How can I use these 7 steps since I'm a sarcoidosis patient? Do you have any specifics that would help me?
I think because everyone's, as I, first of all, taking the perspective that I'm not a physician and I don't understand sarcoidosis as well as a physician does, it is my understanding that experiences and symptoms can range considerably. So I think what would be more helpful is if you want to talk about that a little more, the person who asked, if you want to talk about that a little bit more specifically, to send me a note and talk about what your day-to-day experience is like with sarcoidosis, and we might be able to work together on that. No, if I knew some of the more specifics. Another option is to talk specifically with a physician or any other medical practitioner that you're working with, like an occupational therapist or a physical therapist, and sort of in the spirit of advocating for yourself, share some of these ideas that you're looking to form some habits, and to working sort of, we're not in the same room together, but we're kind of working as a team. You, me as a wellness coach, and these ideas, and them with a more upfront understanding of your condition, along with the specific medical expertise that might be able to better help you. So I hope that helps. And again, if I can help, if you think I could help further, feel free to send me an email on that.
Great, thank you. It's psychologically difficult being a sarcoidosis patient. Is there any kind of behavior or habit I can learn to help me through this?
Without being in your shoes and knowing specifically what's difficult, I can only offer maybe some general ideas. What I'll offer that I think could be helpful is really leaning into that 7th step that I mentioned, the getting support from others. I'll give you an example from a scientific study that demonstrates the power of social support. What they do in this scientific study is they bring the subjects to the base of a steep hill, and after some instruction on how to rate the grade or slope of a hill, the subjects rate the hill. So they say that's a 3% incline, that's a 5% incline, whatever it is. And then they go home and they think that the study is over. And then they get a phone call and they say, thank you for participating in our study. We need to collect some more data. Will you come back and do it again? And will you bring a friend this time? And what they do the second time is the same study circumstances. They rate the same hill, but this time they're doing it with a friend standing next to them. That's the only difference, the only condition that's different. And people rate the grade or slope of the hill as less steep when a friend is standing next to them. I hope that doesn't sound trite. I certainly don't mean it in that spirit. I certainly mean it from a compassionate place and from personal experience of going through hard things, including sickness, that when we're sort of sharing the experience with other people, there's a buffering experience that tends to make it at least a little bit easier. So that would be an area of, well, and I'll add that might sound a little out of left field, because we think of wellness, commonly think of wellness as eating habits and exercise habits, but cultivating fulfilling relationships is a huge part of holistic wellness. And based on what I know from your question, I think if I were in your shoes, that's something that I would lean into the best I could.
Great, thank you. Next question. I have sarcoid in my salivary glands and parotid. I'm thirsty and hungry all the time, and I've gotten obese. Is there anything in your 7-step program that could help me, and can you provide me with an example?
That's challenging, because if I understand the question right, there's a true physiological increased thirst and hunger. I can take some shots at this, but I'd say that it's mostly out of my scope of practice, and is likely a better question for a physician, a registered dietitian, potentially. The small help that I might be able to offer is to practice, and this doesn't come directly from the 7 steps that I spoke about today, but to practice distinguishing between thirst and hunger. Because what's possible, because they're two different experiences, but they interact similarly in our brains and bodies. And if you can learn to distinguish a little bit, there's a good chance that what might be happening is sometimes you're eating when you're thirsty would be the most straightforward way of saying it. And it might be possible to take some of that time and have that be more drinking water and less eating if you're not genuinely, if what you really are at the time is thirsty as opposed to hungry. I think that's the best I can do with that. And I would encourage you to lean into other medical professionals that might be able to help more than I can on that one.
Okay, here's another question. Again, there's a lot of questions regarding nutrition.
Okay.
And this may be similar to some other earlier questions. My hardest thing is keeping up with my nutrition, and I'd like to understand how to be more consistent. Can you provide me with any advice?
Yeah, I would say keep it as simple as possible. There's no shame in coming up with a very small list of go-to nutritious meals and go-to nutritious snacks. Keeping the ingredients for those meals and snacks stocked and going back to those frequently and only when you feel like you have some proficiency with a limited number, only then playing with expanding it. I would double down on the idea of see if you can get some help. If this is something you can do with a friend or relative or a neighbor or a colleague, because what can happen is we all have days where we have a little more energy to put in this kind of stuff and other days when we have less. And if we're sort of teaming up on this, when you're lower energy, good chance that, we're not going to always have low energy days on the same day. So I can sort of have your back and you can have my back when I'm having lower energy days. That's something that would be, potentially helpful as well.
Okay, thank you. Question and statement. Exhaustion is the hardest for me. I have 2 or 3 days with exhaustion, and it's hard to stick to habits, but I do get support from others. But it does not come from the medical community. It comes from church. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, as you might get the sense of from some of my answers to questions and how much I spoke about that 7th step and calling it, my co-favorite of the 7 steps, wherever the support comes from, I say, drink from that fountain as much as is helpful to you. So that's fantastic that you have that kind of support from your church community. With fatigue and exhaustion, as hard as this is to think about it this way, but one of the answers is to respect it, to get the rest and the sleep that can help you. Well, and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes in terms of treatment. But getting the rest and the sleep you need and really honoring that, well, that's your reality. Well, that's your current reality. Well, also leaning into any treatments you're receiving that have any potential to reduce that fatigue or exhaustion over time. I think that would be a good long-term strategy.
Thank you. The next question is, what holistic therapy do you suggest to your other clients that might be helpful for us too?
These are things I would check with a physician, because I don't have the medical knowledge of sarcoidosis. Things like spending time in nature is something, I guess using the word therapy around it, could be borderline. But there's a lot of benefits that affect us physiologically from spending time in nature. We have lower heart rates. We have lower levels of cortisol, which is the primary stress hormone in our bodies. That's the one that I see as having the most upside and the least potential challenges for most people. Let me just think for a moment. That's really the only one that I can recommend without hesitation. I think for anything else, I would check with a physician.
Okay, thank you. I think we're out of questions. Is there any advice, general advice you would provide to the folks listening in tonight that might be able to help them?
Especially hearing, taking the questions collectively, and again, this could sound trite, but this is something I say probably to every client I have, is to think of forming self-care habits in short periods of time. 2 weeks at the most, a week, even a couple of days. And don't try to think about, I need to do this every day for the rest of my life, or I need to be doing this forever. The habit formation happens, a habit by definition is something that we do automatically. The habit will come if you think of doing it for the next 2 days, and then for the next 2 days, and then for the next 2 days. Thinking of it in small batches like that can be really helpful. And something we haven't touched on yet today that I think you'll find helpful is something that I learned in my training at the Mayo Clinic that we call maintaining an experimental mindset. So like a scientist, we don't expect, or like Thomas Edison experimenting with, inventing the light bulb, we don't expect every effort we make to work the first time. But what we do is we take some action with an experimental mindset, and we look at what about that approach didn't work, and we're gonna scrap that, or we're gonna modify that. And what from that approach did work? Maybe we can amplify that. So that's something I would encourage you as general advice is as you think about making improvements to behaviors, is think about it in a small period of time. And it relates a little bit to that idea of an anti-perfectionist attitude, but a positive way of thinking that is maintain an experimental mindset. There's no abject failure. There's only learning that can happen. And if you keep that kind of a mindset, I think you'll enjoy the process more, and that'll help you stay in the game longer and ultimately contribute to more success in the long run.
Great. Well, Jason, we're running up to about 9 o'clock. I'd like to thank you and everyone who attended tonight. Jason, again, was good enough to provide his email and phone number. So if anybody has additional questions and you'd like to reach Jason, you have his information there, as well as it's going to be posted on our website. So again, if you have any questions or need to contact him, you'll have that information. We do have webinars and speakers every month, so please check the website, lifeandbreath.org, for more information. Thank you very much. Everyone have a good night. Stay warm. We wish and support all the best to the Ukrainian people as well. Thank you again.